Yo,
Hey, what's going on, bro?
glad to
Episode
see you.
4, and we're back.
95 degrees in the Midwest this week. Heard it might be even hotter where you're at.
Dude, I am sweating from my eyeballs all the way down to my actual balls.
Bro, I mean, I'm impressed that you're outside.
I'm not, it's probably worse than being outside because I'm in like an enclosed porch, so the sun is like kind of like baking me. It's like a greenhouse. But
Wow.
honestly, dude, I prefer it over the cold, so I don't mind too much.
Yeah, it was a long winter. So I'm not
Yeah.
gonna complain about this heat. I'm actually gonna get out there and enjoy it a little bit and get roasted. Maybe if I get roasted enough out there, then I can conserve that heat for next winter. I can draw on that, just store it somewhere inside and then bring it out when it's freaking 25 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, I went dipping in a swimming hole yesterday. Oh, so good. Watched the sunset. I met this dude that actually had family connections with, and we were chatting all night. It was an awesome experience.
Wow. Oh man, so many good things in the summer. Saw some fireworks on Saturday. It's the big 250 for the U.S., so all the July 4th celebrations are a little bit extra this year. But these guys did theirs earlier because they wanted more traffic. It's like a town of like 2,000 people, but they get 30,000 visitors on this one Saturday. They always do the week before the 4th of July, so they're not conflicting with the other events on the 4th. And man, it's amazing to see a town of 2,000 people with 30,000 human beings in it. Like it's just everywhere you
With
walk,
that many
your
people.
shoulder, dude, you're shoulder to shoulder with people, and it's in a park, so like everyone is just condensing in this park in the middle of town, and I mean, yeah, there's hardly room to scratch your ass. But the fireworks were amazing, and it's a cool place. They've been doing that celebration for years and years. It's an Amish community, and yeah, they take it seriously. They take a lot of
You
pride
say
in it.
you say Amish?
Yeah, it's an Amish community. Yeah,
Oh,
dude.
damn.
So it's
You
Arthur.
know.
It's Arthur. And Arthur, Arcola, and a couple of other surrounding towns in Illinois, they're all Amish centric communities. So as soon as you get within 15 miles of there, you see a lot of horse and buggies and a lot of people who are,
Were they the
still
ones
legit.
lighting the fireworks off?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know
I
Amish
know.
got into that. I thought that's illegal to them, bro.
I don't know. I'm not judging.
They're
I'm not.
probably They're probably building those out back in their barns. Whoa. I would love to see an Amish firework festival. That would be crazy.
Dude, it was extra. They had fireballs. They were doing, man, yeah. I have to upload a video or something because they're doing these fireballs and just shooting these massive balls of fire into the sky, and that's something I've never seen before.
They do
So yeah,
everything like to the nines. They do everything perfect. I can
yeah,
only
yeah.
imagine the fireworks being just exceptional. That's crazy. I went to
I've
so
noticed
we're
that.
on the talks of what happened this past weekend, and we'll get into our conversations in a minute. Have you ever heard of
Yeah,
Alice Gray or Allison Gray, the artist?
I don't think so. Maybe.
You've probably have seen their paintings before because they have some of the most insane, like psychedelic, but just beautiful art, man. Um, so they have their chapel, but it's a church, but it's kind of like psychedelic based, and it's basically the viewing hall for all of their art. They're very like well renowned artists, and it's like only 30 minutes from my place. So they've been having full moon gathering at their residence for like I want to say the past 23 years, unbroken every month, 293 events. They have a live stream on YouTube. You can actually watch it. It's really profound, dude. If you ever come out to New York, oh, it was such a good time. They had fire dancing, fire spinning, music, live guitar. It's just like, oh, it's such a great time. If I was on my computer, what's that?
I'm coming on the full moon when I visit. Yeah.
Dude, come next month. It was awesome. If you can pull up, maybe just type in Alex Gray on your computer real quick, and you probably pull up one of his
Yeah.
most famous um, paintings. But he did work with like Timothy Leary, Albert Hoffman, Ram Dass, big, I grew up in the 70s, so big LSD user. And dude, his art is just absolutely mind blowing. And it's
Oh wow.
so beautiful. And it just like tells the picture of humanity. It brings spirituality just like into everyone's eyes, like the truth of the matter.
Wow. Let me
Share one of
see.
share one of like the if you can see like maybe his like 3D or his like what do you call it, transparent like human body sort of paintings.
This. Can you see this?
I can't, but maybe everyone else can because I'm on my phone
Yeah,
right now.
I'm sure it's up there, dude. It's freaking profound. That's wild.
That's not the one I'm talking about, but that is a beautiful one, yeah. Anyway, dude, when you come, we gotta go. It's a crazy fun experience.
For sure. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'll just say, what are we at? 7 minutes here? One more thing is, on Friday night, have you ever heard of ecstatic dance?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've never done it.
Dude, do it. It's so good. It moves, it's just
Actually,
basically, what's that?
actually, when we went to Casa de la Luz in Costa Rica for the ayahuasca retreat, that like second night right before the ceremony, we did dancing to just like loosen up the energy. Is that kind
Uh,
of
yeah, I guess
on this?
so. I don't remember, but maybe. This is more of like, you're in a larger crowd of people. The music is, yeah, that was probably like a mini, mini, mini sliver of what it actually is. But it's
Yeah, I
like
mean
this
there were like
whole,
6 people, so it wasn't like yeah, huge crowd or anything.
yeah, it's this whole experience they bring you through. It's basically like a sober party. I mean, I take mushrooms if you want or psychedelics, but there's no alcohol. There's usually like cacao or something. But it's such a good way to just move your body, dance freely to some awesome music, and also to meet people. And like, if you want, you can dance with other people. But it's um, it's just a whole different perspective. Kind of on, I would relate it to the partying scene because that's what, in the Western world, how we get introduced to music usually and like dancing. It's like completely flipping it on its head and just coming at it from a sober angle and just like community based and no phones, no communication, no like, it's just purely just communicating through the language of music and movement of the body. It's just such a good way to just move all the stagnant bullshit in our bodies. It's beautiful. So if it ever comes across your path, I suggest it. You can bring Snippy and it'd be a really cool experience.
Dude, that sounds beautiful, man. Have to check that out. So you were having some fun this since the
Dude,
last time we talked.
my motto is like I'm getting out into the community. I'm gonna connect in all the different ways that I can.
And nice. Well, talking about a different take on partying, I think today we're going to talk about a slightly different kind of take on capitalism compared to some of the normal conversations. Why don't we dive into it? It was a great idea. You kind of had the inspiration for this episode. So yeah, just walk through the
It
foundation. We'll get in.
it kind of goes along the same lines as the partying. It's benevolent capitalism. So we could say we have benevolent capitalism right now. And then the theory or the transition into what benevolent capitalism looks like to us, to the greater world, and why it can be potentially a very, very valuable transition. And also to maybe look at capitalism from a different angle. I think we've all been kind of programmed to believe it to be maybe something, or at least I should reel that back. Most of us are, depending on our maybe our monetary bracket that we were born into gives us the lens in which we view capitalism. If we're born rich, maybe we see capitalism as beautiful. If we're born poor, then we see capitalism maybe as the shit storm. So yeah, that's the topic of today. I forget. Do you remember the guy's name on the Diary of the CEO? What his the billionaire's guy's name was?
I don't. I wanna look. You sent me that.
Yeah, I forget
That
his
link.
name. You'll pull it up. But yeah, so there was recently, it was like within the past week, a podcast on the Diary of this was it his Diary of CEO, right? Yeah, the Diary of his CEO
Yeah, yeah, yeah. With Steve
podcast.
Martin.
Yeah, and he had this billionaire on there. I'm not
Jeremy
gonna
Grant. Yeah,
Jerry what?
Jeremy Grantham was the dude that came on. Yeah.
Jeremy Grantham.
Grantham. Yeah, he was the co-founder of an institutional investment firm in Boston and
Yeah,
is a very influential guy.
yeah, okay, yeah. So he's a billionaire, made all his money, I guess, in the markets, managing. Maybe I think he was in a hedge fund, and also he has been donating basically now all of his wealth to natural environmentalist movements and whatnot. So anyway, here's where I got this idea from. So let's dive into it. How should we start this? What do you think this current state of capitalism is right now?
Yeah. So there's a lot of definitions that fly around about capitalism, and some people define it as like it's a system where some people have all of the capital and some people are laborers, or it's a system where like resources are distributed in this way. Uh, I would say that it's important what we believe capitalism means. To me, it just means free exchange. So it's the idea that, you know, people are not going to be coerced. There's not going to be any aggression or regulation by the state. It's just like the state is separate from the economy in the same way and for the same reasons as the state is separate from religion. That's basically what capitalism is. It's where the state doesn't really interfere and lets the place. Yeah, it's free exchange basically. So let's say that the state of it is that there is a lot of government involvement. I guess the U.S. in that way, it's not really a capitalist country. I don't think there are any capitalist countries in the world today. Every society is organized with a heavy state involvement in the economy. Some people say that what we have is like crony capitalism, where there's a lot of like private business, there's a lot of privately owned property, and there's a lot of voluntary interaction going on. But then you have also on top of that, or if you want to say on top or mixed in with that, there's a lot of government regulation as well, a lot of coercive intervention, regulation, laws in place dictating what you can and can't do, licensing. Tons of things have state licenses. And people say that's like crony capitalism because of the way that people tend to influence the regulations. So they tend to form big lobbying departments and lobby the state to make rules that favor their business and shut out their competitors and such. And I do believe that that's a pretty accurate take on the current situation. Just talking about the U.S. for now, to say that there's a lot of voluntary exchange. Like we have some voluntary or some a lot of private property and like voluntary action, but it's not a free marketplace because there's also a lot of coercion and aggression from the state that dictates what people are doing.
Yeah, yeah. So, would you say that the current state of capitalism is, you would say, benevolent, is not serving the people anymore?
Yeah, so there's a couple different angles to it. I mean, there's also the angle of what people do with their freedom. Like we say that capitalism is free exchange. Like we can just say all it is the absence of coercion, the absence of government regulation making you do certain things. It's just a free marketplace. Well, there's also a lot of bad things that people do with the freedom that they do have. I mean, I actually I wrote an article a while back called "Commercialism and Consumerism Have Given Capitalism a Bad Name." I wrote that like a year ago, and I think we do a lot of bad things. A baseball player makes like $500 million while people are starving in the streets, and we do a lot of things like companies, they pollute and they harm the environment even when they could put more protective measures in place. Um, so we do bad things with the freedoms that we have, and I think that's part of the problem. So, and that's one reason why people say, yeah, that capitalism is in a malevolent place and it has to be controlled, and government is the way to do it. Um, but in either case, I do believe that with the way that the state interacts with the marketplace and the way that people use the freedoms they do have, we are in kind of a, yeah, I would say like a malevolent capitalism kind of place.
Yeah, I think it's because it's more reflective of the state of the current governments or our government in the West specifically, and how the markets have been manipulated, specifically our money supply, and how that basically is maybe more of a proper lens to maybe look at capitalism through nowadays because of the underlying manipulation that's come from our governments and their own corruption that has developed over the years. But to me, there's always a silver lining, and we always have this essence of freedom, no matter how restrained life may look. There's always a level of freedom that can't be taken from us. Um, we're always sovereign on the inside. At least that's that is our birthright to have that sovereignty, and then from there, free choice or you know right use of will. And to me, that comes from the use of how we spend our dollars, like voting with our dollars. That concept is to me what we're seeing nowadays, and actually its impact on the greater world, and how this transition from a malevolent system to a benevolent system, as far as capitalism goes, can actually begin to happen. And actually, we are seeing it with our own eyes nowadays. Would you agree with that? Do you see how voting with our dollars is super powerful and is really the our tickets to freedom nowadays within the market?
Dude, absolutely. So that is the most beautiful thing about a free marketplace. I mean, if you look at like Riverside, the company that made the technology that we're doing this podcast on, or Amazon, or the company that made the phone that you use, like the only way that those companies, that those institutions survive is by people voluntarily supporting them. And people only do that because they believe that they get more value than what they're paying for. So they have to provide value to people to survive. So yeah, absolutely. That's always been the case in a free marketplace, that we control. There's no greater control, right? Than as in terms of like interacting with other people. That economic power. I mean, your dollars, how you spend them, like you don't have to spend it at any company. You don't have to buy a single thing from anybody if you don't feel like it's valuable. You can redirect that to any place. It's exactly the issue with what you're talking about with inflation, with the inflation of the money supply. It's basically taking away that very power. You're able use your money if it's not forcefully expropriated from you and used for things that you would never use it for. Uh, it's a reason why we have wars that nobody supports. It's a reason why companies stay alive that nobody wants to support because they get funded by taxpayer bailouts because the government has basically a blank check to write to anybody because they're able to expropriate wealth through inflating the money supply. That's the distortion of it. But yeah, of course, that's the beauty of the free market is you're you decide what companies live and die. You don't have to spend your money at any particular company.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is. See, the game has gotten so tricky at this point when you talk about the money supply, inflation, and everything, and everyone's becoming hip to it nowadays. So they're trying to move their money around. And a lot of people are putting their money in the stock market. And that is one of the biggest ways the government manipulates this whole thing is through the markets. I mean, right now we're sitting like insane levels of, we're sitting like 30 to 40x above actual companies' valuations. You know, how much they're actually making per year. Their stock price is way overvalued. And what is that saying? It's saying that, people are, it's maybe the unconscious trying to capitalize on maybe what's been happening over the past 5 years since COVID. We've seen big booms in the stock market and huge returns. I forget the statistic, but in that podcast, he talks about like the top 2%, of Americans. They own, I think, I don't know, like 50% of the wealth or whatever in America, or some crazy number. And they saw their net worth increase by 1,000x or something like that in the past 5 years. And then you have the smaller guys, the retail investors, hopping into that and keeping the big money afloat. Then it puts us into a shitty situation because then they can pull the plug when they've made their money and the stocks are already insanely overvalued. And that's when, we might not be buying the product, but we're still buying the company and we're still falling into the trap of supporting them. But that's the tricky question because then we have inflation. So where do we put our fucking money? No matter what, consumer interests are going to guide these big corporations. You see it throughout, food companies specifically. Some of these big, Kellogg's and these guys, I don't know specifically of Kellogg's, but I've seen some of the big names start to change their ingredients because, everyone's becoming hip to the idea of all the pesticides and all the bullshit in our food system. So that's a great example of seeing this transition of, bidding with our dollars. You got anything to kind of fold into that comment at all?
Yeah, yeah, dude. Good insights, man. That's you're touching on the heart of something important. I mean, if we just contrast it, imagine that we didn't have the um, just we'll say the legal tender laws. The whole thing runs on legal tender laws. We're basically forced to accept U.S. dollars as currency. So you have to use it. That's step one. Once you
Well,
have
hold
to
on,
use,
I will say some states allow, precious metal is legal tender.
oh,
Some states
well,
do. It might even
yeah,
be federal, but I'm not sure. I don't think it is.
I know you can use them, but I think even in those states, you're still required you can't turn down a fiat dollars. If
Oh,
someone wants to settle their debt with you with fiat dollars, you have to accept them.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's like a federal policy. But that's step one is everybody has to use the currency. Everybody has to accept it for the settling of debts and payments. Once you do that, then you inflate it. Imagine if we did not inflate the money supply. It doesn't really matter what we use for money. Say that we just are using like precious metals, that we just use precious metals. We have hard money. We'll call it sound money instead of worthless paper fiat money, which is basically just a shit coin that's being peddled by the government that we're all made to use. Um, so if we all are using precious metals, then every week, month, and year, we're getting better at making the basic survival goods that we need to eat. We get better at making food. We're not getting worse at it. We make products with better tools. We make things in with more refined industrial engineering, better processes. So we're always getting better at making stuff. That's been true for 300 years. We invent things. That's what human beings do. We innovate, we invent, we make it better, faster, cheaper. Without inflation, our money would actually buy more stuff. Every year over year, our money would actually buy more stuff. That's just the natural deflationary tendency of human societies. Because we invent, because we innovate, we don't stay still. Somebody's always going to find a better mousetrap. So, in that situation, people would not be so desperate to invest their money. They would not feel that they must do something to keep up with inflation. People are, I mean, I would even argue that a lot of the investment industry, the entire industry, exists because of inflation. Really. And there's always insiders in that game. So, of course, there's guys that are going to sit at kind of the top of that hierarchy who are going to be able to use everyone else's participation to their advantage. And everybody's kind of pushed into it. So yeah, there is a lot of distortion with that. But as you said, people are waking up. They're waking up to inflation. There's a lot of, I think that just the internet and decentralized intelligence and media, or decentralized information sharing in media has really made that tide impossible to stop. You know, before the internet and before guys like me and you could get on here and just talk about shit like this, people got the information mostly from like the mainstream news, and they never talked about that. But now the cat's out of the bag. People know what's happening. And same, people are more educated about food. So yeah, man, I see that as one of the redeeming paths to the situation, that people are gaining more knowledge and insight, and they're not to be fooled. There a lot of this distortion, once you bring it out into plain sight, people are like, what the fuck? We have to change this. We have to do something different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they usually it comes out to light um, when it's far down the road, it tends to. But yeah, going back to benevolent capitalism, so I see it as yes, it's the bidding with your dollars, and then also like the pyramid scheme, the hierarchy of wealth in a capitalist society is going to exist to some degree. It's not going to vanish. It's part of capitalism by nature, right? And there is, hierarchy in society in general. I mean, that's a whole different topic, but I agree with it. I think there's value there, but it's the morals and the foundation in which it's founded upon. So basically, the benevolent capitalism is the transition of wealth or the wealth transfer from benevolent human beings to benevolent human beings that have a greater vision to preserve humanity, the environment, Earth, and want to uplift the race, spiritually, economically, community, all of that. So I would say at the core, that's kind of it for me. Like it's just this transfer of wealth. And actually what I'll say is like it comes back to who the person behind the dollar, who has the dollars, the person behind it. Like who are they at the core? It's not the system. It's the people that have engineered the system and or have, taken control along the way of it, and then recognizing, okay, now it's time to regain control of it. And then, I mean, I don't know if you have any insights on how a system can work outside of capitalism, if you're in favor of any other sort of, communism or socialist sort of perspectives, but be keen to hear your take on that. If capitalism is, do you see it as for what it is and like its beauty, or do you see it as a destructive just component of society?
Yeah, man. That's a beautiful idea about a transition from the relatively malevolent system or structure, the way things are organized now, to a benevolent one. I do believe that that's part of the
It's
heart
the
of
individual,
what's.
though, the individual behind it.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Absolutely. We need people to be benevolent towards each other, and especially people who have a lot of resources and who have a lot of wealth. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of what would be an amazing change, to see those resources in the hands of people who will use them in a benevolent way, or to change the minds of the people who have a great most of the resources, and to get them to act more benevolently. I mean, I do see, absolutely. I think the free market is an inherently good thing. I think that it goes all the way back to self sovereignty. If we say that people own themselves, then you have to acknowledge private property rights. If you don't own the property that you invest your time and life energy in, then you can't really say that you own yourself. So I do believe that, like, respecting private property rights and respecting people's right to act is, I think that's foundational. That's the free market. But I believe that the free market is only a foundation. You have to have freedom first and then excellence. I think that we get confused sometimes. We think that, like, socialism and communism are basically ways to force that excellence on people. They're ways to use the state to try and make that redistribution happen. It all has a good idea behind it. It's a great idea. We're going to take the wealth from people who aren't using it well, and we're going to try to use it for better things. It's a great idea, but because it's based in aggression, it just never seems to work that way. The motives get distorted, and you see, like, the USSR, how badly they collapsed, and every other country that ever tried that involuntary communism and socialism. I will say that if you have a free market, one thing I think that would be great is people can choose a voluntary socialism. You can choose that. I think you need the freedom to choose, but a voluntary socialism that's not coerced could be a very beautiful thing. That, I mean, you see it, like, actually families are already like that. Like like growing up, like, my family is basically like voluntary socialism or voluntary communism. Like, my resources are your resources. Like, within our family, we all just, like, chose that. Like, that's how we behaved toward each other. It's like, if you need some money, or you need this or you need that, like, whatever. It's my stuff is your stuff. But I don't think that force can achieve it. I think it's something we have to choose.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, part of that resonates with me. Um, as I'm thinking about this right now. There's this different layer that I wanted to add in here as a part of another conversation with Wayne that I had a few days ago. Um, and it's how the benevolent beings and capitalism have taken over. It's transferred the what power is in our world. So powers essentially has been boiled down to dollar signs. You know, how many zeros you have. I mean, it expands beyond that, but that was like the gateway that allowed some of these people to access these levels of authority. And then by means of technology and certain coercion, have manipulated the masses. And now it's turned into this whole fucking, you know, mosh pit of the game we're playing right now, where there's a lot happening. You know, we're deep in it. We're deep in it. We're not at the foundational steps anymore. We're at the tail end of it to be maybe reprogrammed and restructured. But yeah, so when you understand it from this angle, it's like, yeah, power no longer, like, when money wasn't the core of society, right? It wasn't like the epicenter. Um, the other things uplifted or what or filled that void in other societies. You know, depending on how far you want to go back, it usually may have been the masculine, who was the strongest and most powerful male. Spirituality, I think maybe you could tie that to the Egyptians, like the Most High was seen as that sort of vital. But when we put this benevolent capitalism as the epicenter of the power, it's it has this descending effect onto society of like us forgetting our roles. It disintegrates this masculine presence, this feminine presence, and their importance in our society. When men don't need to be strong and uh, in all the ways, spiritually, mentally, and physically, and be out in the field and things like of that nature. Not saying that's how it needs to be, but when that essence like is not at all valued in society because everyone's just focusing on getting that money, but not realizing it's really just a pyramid scheme. You're never gonna get more than the guy at the top because he's controlling the damn printing machine. Uh, I've just seen it kind of like strip out some of these really core parts of what keeps a society nice and in sync.
Yeah, man. That's I think it's like a mass. Like it starts as like a very like a celestial body and it gains so much mass that all the other things in the solar system start to revolve around it. And like that's what it kind of feels like that the society just is orbiting around that game. Like you said, like people put less and less focus on other things and then they are devoting more and more time and energy to how to play that game and get money. But you just have to remember like what is the point? What is the deeper purpose behind what we are doing? Is it genuinely leading to flourishing and thriving or is it just more of an empty pursuit like it's something we're doing out of desperation and confusion and I think there's a lot of desperation and confusion right now. Money on its own is not a bad thing. Money is something that we use to facilitate transactions. I think it's kind of sort of a natural thing as civilizations expand. It just becomes more difficult to do like barter trade. So I do think money is something that has always been natural to civilization, but when we get to the level that we're at with all the distortions and how we've just pathologically focused on it, then it's really bad for us. And
Yeah,
we to be obsessed with it is to live have a pretty dark experience.
yeah, yeah. I think it's fascinating to get when I've been in this contemplative state before, where it's like to fully recognize you don't actually need money. Like if you really wanted to, you could live without money. It'd be hard. I mean, we're pretty far removed from our natural habitats, but like you can live off the land. That is, I want to always remember that for myself, for everyone else, to just, it's a very grounding piece of knowledge to recognize that money is simply a social contract that as we continue to live in our homes and participate in the economy, is us just agreeing to that. You know, it's, it is what it is. And it's not bad, like you said. Now, the the manipulation that's happened behind the scenes as far as the creation of that has turned south. But as far as the money that's going into our pockets, the dollar bill standing in front of us, the amount of money you do or don't have in your bank account, it's not, it's just a transfer of energy. Now, how you acquired the money, that's different. There's the way you've acquired that. You could say that energy of how much, whatever that dollar amount is, can be bad or good. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, man. It's it has to take its place in the circle of the values that you have. We we're happiest, I think, when we don't let it have a disproportional share of our value. When you recognize that it's something that you need to survive in this world, and that you gotta earn it, then, but it's not the be
It's
all to
something you
end
need to
all.
survive in society, not in the world.
Yes, not in this world. That is true. Exactly. Like you said, you can live off the land. I'm gonna say I'll frame this way. I have been fortunate to go broke 2 times in my adult life. I'm 35 and I've been completely broke twice in my adult life. I actually kind of consider it a blessing, because it did help kind of break some of my attachment. Like, I realized that I'm fine. Nothing terrible happened to me. I didn't like dissolve into a puddle of mud because I went broke. Like, I'm still here. I'm still kicking. So for sure, I still want to get money, and sometimes I even still get a little bit obsessed with it. Sometimes that distortion kind of like affects me, but not as much as it used to. And now more I see the pathological side of it. But I think that's part of getting to benevolent capitalism, is breaking the obsession with money,
Yeah.
and getting to a place where it takes an appropriate part in our values, where it doesn't have this disproportionate role in determining all that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I think is happening on the greater scale right now as the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. As that economic divide begins to grow more and more, it's gonna get to that breaking point where the lower class is just they don't wanna they got nothing left to lose. They're gonna feel what you felt in that position, essentially, of like being literally broke, whether they are or aren't. But in comparison to the rich, it's gonna feel like that. And then that creates a magnificent letting go that can kind of shapeshift into a whole different reality and bring in things that were never in your focus before. And it's a beautiful time to allow for this new life to emerge and a whole new system to possibly emerge. I mean, typically, that's when there's civil war, some sort of, conflict within society, and that alone you could say is not even essentially necessarily good or bad. It's more of the intention behind it. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm not advocating for like killing people or anything of that nature, but you know what I mean, as far as like one group of people standing up for what they believe in as opposed to another group of people. That's kind of how that relates to exactly what you experience. And
Yeah.
it could be a very formative experience for the world in a good way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, man. There's so much to say around this. It leads into a lot of other topics, maybe stuff that we'll explore in other episodes. But yeah, I do think that we're at a big transition period. Um, I think we're going to go in the right direction. Maybe I'm just a naturally optimistic guy, but I do think that just because of the dissemination of information, people are wising up, and they're not so much suckers to the game. And I do think that we have a great deal of power, that we don't always take advantage of the great deal of power that each of us has, but when we do, when we're using our dollars and our voice wisely, then we can transform that malevolence into benevolence.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I think we're at a very pivotal place in life, and the access to knowledge is allowing us, I think, on the greater scale, to choose which path we go down. So I think we're experiencing the split in reality where people are choosing the high road. Some people are not choosing to leave this current system, but nonetheless, the choice is being presented for everyone, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, let's wrap it up. Good stuff, and more to come. We'll be doing Wild Wednesday in a couple days.
Hell yeah, man. All right, bro. It was a pleasure. I will see you Wednesday.
See you Wednesday. Peace out.